Mist rolled low over the fields of northern England as dawn struggled to break through a cold September sky. The year was 937. Before the sun would set, the ground would drink more royal blood than it ever had before or since. By nightfall, 5 kings would be dead, and the shape of England would be carved in iron. The place was called Brunanburh. Its exact location has been argued over for centuries, but on that day it became something far greater than a dot on a map. It became the crucible in which a fragile kingdom either shattered forever or was fused into something new. At the center of it all stood Æthelstan, grandson of Alfred the Great. He was not just fighting for land. He was fighting for an idea that barely existed. A single England, united under one crown. His claim was bold. For the first time, a ruler styled himself King of the English, not just Wessex or Mercia. To his enemies, that ambition was dangerous. To his allies, it was destiny. Across the sea and across the north, that ambition ignited a rare and deadly alliance. From Dublin came the Viking king Olaf Guthfrithson, bringing seasoned Norse warriors hardened by Irish wars. From Scotland marched Constantine II of Scotland, determined to curb southern expansion. From Strathclyde rode Owain of Strathclyde, representing the last stronghold of the old Brittonic kings. Around them gathered lesser rulers and jarls, men whose names are lost but whose banners snapped in the same wind. They were not natural allies. Vikings and Scots had clashed before. Britons and Norse distrusted one another. But fear of Æthelstan's growing power bound them together. If he succeeded, the North would never be the same. Æthelstan did not face them alone. At his side stood his younger brother, Edmund, barely out of youth but already blooded in war. The English Fyrd had been summoned from shires across the land, farmers, thanes, and seasoned housecarls. The banners of Wessex and Mercia flew side by side. For perhaps the first time, men who once saw themselves as separate peoples stood in a single line. As the armies assembled, the scale must have been staggering. Shield walls stretching across fields. Spears angled forward like a forest of ash. Ravens circling overhead as if summoned by prophecy. Chronicles later wrote that no greater slaughter had been seen on this island since the Anglo-Saxons first arrived centuries before. The battle likely began with skirmishes, arrows arcing through gray air, cavalry probing flanks, war cries echoing over churned earth. Then came the clash. Shield met shield with a crack like splitting timber. Spears thrust. Axes rose and fell. The front ranks would have fought in suffocating proximity, breath hot against iron, boots slipping in mud already slick with blood. The Norse warriors of Dublin were fierce and disciplined, their round shields locked tight. Scottish fighters pushed hard, seeking to break the English center. The men of Strathclyde, heirs to Roman Britain's fading memory, hurled themselves forward with desperate resolve. At some point in the chaos, a king fell. We do not know exactly how the first royal death occurred. Perhaps a spear slipped through mail. Perhaps a sword found the gap beneath a helmet. But word spreads fast in battle. When a king goes down, it is as if the sun flickers. Standards waver. Men glans over shoulders. Confidence fractures. Still the fighting raged. Æthelstan is said to have fought at the heart of his army, not hidden behind walls but visible to his men. Whether every detail of later praise is true hardly matters. What matters is that he did not break. The English line held. Another king fell. Then another. The sources are fragmentary, but they speak of 5 kings and 7 earls slain. 5 rulers who had marched to crush a rising power instead lay motionless on foreign soil. One of the dead was Constantine's own son, cut down in the struggle. For a father and a king. That loss was both personal and political. A wound no armor could deflect. The slaughter became legendary. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle exulted in victory, describing how the invaders fled northward, leaving their dead to the ravens and wolves. Ships that had brought warriors across the sea now carried survivors back in grim silence. Olaf Guthfrithson escaped, but not in triumph. He returned to Dublin diminished, his grand coalition shattered. Constantine II of Scotland survived as well, but his prestige was broken. The dream of halting English dominance through combined force had failed. Owain of Strathclyde faded back into the mists of history, his kingdom increasingly overshadowed. For Æthelstan, The field of Brunanburh was more than a victory. It was proof. Proof that the English kingdom could withstand a united assault from every direction. Proof that King of the English was not empty arrogance. In the aftermath, the bodies of 5 kings lay among thousands of warriors. Imagine the sight at dusk. Broken shields, snapped spears, banners trampled into mud. The groans of the wounded fading into stillness. The metallic scent of blood heavy in the cooling air. No modern monument marks the exact spot with certainty. Historians debate whether Brunanburh lay near the Wirral, in Lancashire or elsewhere. But wherever it was, the consequences rippled across centuries. Without that victory, England might have fractured. A Norse-dominated north. A resurgent Scottish push southward. A patchwork of competing realms. Instead, the idea of a single English polity endured. Not perfectly. Not without future wars. But it endured. Æthelstan did not live long after his triumph. He died in 939, only 2 years later. Yet his reign marked a turning point. He had gathered the legacy of Alfred, the consolidation of Edward the Elder, and forged them into something durable. The poets who commemorated Brunanburh wrote in soaring verse, celebrating not just slaughter but unity. They framed it as a moment when the English stood together against outsiders. That narrative would echo through medieval chronicles and beyond, shaping identity long after the swords had rusted. And what of the 5 kings? Their names are not all preserved clearly, their stories fragmented. Yet their deaths on that single day symbolized the collapse of a grand alliance. They came to unmake a kingdom, and instead helped cement it. History often turns on quiet decisions made in halls and councils. But sometimes it turns on a single, brutal day when thousands collide and only one side rises again. The Battle of Brunanburh was one of those days. When the mist lifted and the ravens settled, the map of Britain had not visibly changed overnight. Borders were not redrawn with ink. But something less visible and more powerful had shifted. A shared memory had been forged, of resistance, survival, and unity under one crown. 5 kings had marched with ambition. 5 kings lay still. And from their fall, a kingdom rose that would in time become England.